Today, we are going to talk about best practices in executing strategy. Every company has a strategy, yet between 60 and 90% never fully launch. And failed execution through your people is one of the main reasons why. So what is HR's role in executing a successful company strategy? We've called in a top-performing CEO to answer that question and many more. With us today is Ed Walker, CEO of ArmadaCare, where his company delivers specialty benefits that meet the needs of diverse groups of employees within a variety of industries across the U.S. Prior to becoming CEO, he served in senior executive roles at Transamerica and Aegon, including Chief Strategy Officer, Chief Marketing Officer, and Business Unit Leader. Ed, welcome to Voices of HR.
Berta, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we're really striving to explore and help our listeners better understand more deeply is this whole topic around strategic acumen. So as a prior chief strategy officer, CMO, and now CEO, how do you define strategy and how important is it to execute the strategy in every facet of the organization, particularly around HR?
Great question. And, there's a lot of obviously, book definitions or if you Google strategy, I won't go into those because the audience has probably done that already. For me, strategy in terms of it's different based on where the business is in their life cycle. Obviously, if you were beginning a business, you're going to go through, a lot of the what's our mission, vision, value, what markets are we going to serve, what customers. So, all those sort of basic things, basic questions that you would ask. I think for sort of where Armada is, and even when I was with Transamerica, I would say strategy is as much about the things that you won't do as much as the things that you will do. Let me give you an example, and I'm gonna get into how HR plays a role in our HR planning. So from a planning standpoint, we use what's called a strategy map. It's very, very simple, and it shows these are the things that we're going to achieve from our financial goals as well as customer goals, and then we look at what are the activities that will support those goals, and then just rolling those all the way down in the organization. So every single employee in our organization has the strategy map, and they ultimately link to it. So their activities, when they come in day to day, what am I doing on a day-to-day basis that's going to propel the company forward? So that's just a bit of a stage setting. And then we also use balanced scorecard, and then we have supporting initiatives. And we monitor and track those every other week with our leadership team. But to go back to an example, when I first came to Armada in 2015, we were principally targeting what I'd call the C-suite owners and executives. The products that we sell they're very high end. They layer on top of a primary plan. I'm not going to go into a commercial about what we do, but we really served that constituents all the way throughout the organization. So, strategy, sales, marketing, operations, everything. So in terms of when we look at HR and the function that they perform, all the systems have to support that strategy and that constituent that we were targeting. We made the decision as a result of talking to our customers, and our customers would say, "Hey, we love this benefit. It's great. It's really rounded out our primary plan, and it's great for our top talent, but we would like to roll this out, or some version of this product. We would like to roll it out to different groups in the company." So, and we got a lot of that. Just wasn't a one or two request. We got that consistently from many of our customers. So we took a look at what we could do. We had to do some work in terms of our statutory filings, et cetera, we had to retool our organization because we were just focusing on one, sort of one demographic or one target within an employer. And now this was going to be much broader. So operations need to be looked at. Marketing, there's expenses to like going from 3 products to 20 or more. The HR component of that was very important. So if you think about a service business like ours, we deliver promises to individuals when they need us the most. So our employees are very well trained on how to deliver to that C-suite, that owner. Now we had to train them on speaking to a different types of clients or members within that client company. So the role of HR was incredibly important because delivery of our product comes from people. So in that instance, HR they're always right there with us in terms of are we providing the tools to our employees to be able to support the direction of our company.
I love a couple of things that you said, if I can replay them. So first and foremost, I think it was HBR said that 61% of financial success of an organization is driven through the strategy and through the successful execution of the strategy throughout the organization. And one of the things that you talked about was that you make it really, really easy for your team members to understand how their role can impact the greater strategy. Because I think that's a huge, I think it's difficult for most employees who are sitting on the front lines to say, how can I even impact the strategy? Like, strategy always sounds so big, right? But they can and they should. So I think that is such a best practice, is to ensure that your front line, that everybody understands their role and how it ties to the greater strategy. I think secondarily, another great component of strategy is that you're listening to your client and that the client is somewhat helping you determine what that growth strategy is going to be. Obviously, you as an executive team had to step in and say, okay, how can we make this work, right? Financially. But then HR is a huge component of that. So now let me flip it around on you. So that was kind of a bottom-up way to continue to grow and how your people impact. One other part or piece of the strategic puzzle is always looking at current trends and really making bets on how those trends will or maybe will not affect your organization, and then planning accordingly, right? Pulling the thread, determining what type of people or resources or products you need. What are you seeing in your CEO role as key trends over the next, let's say 5, 10, 15 years that will affect most companies, specifically related to people or to HR?
Yeah, good question. So one thing to just as a precursor, we talk about strategy, and I also talked about execution, and then obviously the bigger one is culture. So culturally, I think that's an incredible cog in the whole wheel in terms of effectiveness. So from a strategic standpoint, like, our strategy doesn't change a lot. Okay. We're not changing it every year. We're not, let's just scrap it and start over. We're constantly refining it. And we do refine it around. We look at macro issues. We look at, what's happening, from a political standpoint, macroeconomic standpoint, social standpoint. That's kind of a check. And there's been quite a bit, obviously, that goes on. A lot of times it doesn't move a lot, but there have been a lot of big macro issues or factors out there. I think the biggest, if I had to, I'm sure the audience comes from a broad background, broad industries. I think the big trend that's impacting all of us is diversity, equity, and inclusion. I get that, our own business here is impacted. And even when we're talking to clients and potential clients, that typically comes up. So, diversity, when we talk about diversity, in the workplace, in terms of, generational, cultural, race and gender. So that's what I mean by that. If you look at, we have 85 employees here, but I've been part of, much larger organizations. I think there's about five generations within a workplace. If you look at sort of that traditionalist, I think they make up, roughly 3 to 5%. Boomers are roughly about 25%. Gen X, I guess I'm a Gen X. I'm sort of a Gen X boomer. And millennials about 35%, and then you have Gen Z, which is about 5%. So if you look at the role of an HR leader today, you're really managing multiple workforces. You have
Mm-hmm.
you have different constituents. They all have different needs, and it's not a homogeneous one anymore. I think in terms of like when you look at what is the role of HR, attracting, recruiting, and retaining key talent. It seems to me that you're going to need to be a Marvel Avenger type character, a superhero, and have tools to be able to really just attract and retain the employees in the workforce. But the diversity, equity, inclusion, I think that's the biggest kind of overarching trend that we'll be facing for many years or decades. And you can kind of see if we've got five in the workplace today. There's just more to come.
So when you think about DE&I, what are some companies or who are some companies that are getting it right, and why are they getting it right? And the reason I ask that is because I think there are great intentions out there. I think you're right. Everybody knows that this is where business is going, and there will be different revenue streams from different groups. And if they aren't represented in the workplace, I think it really makes it hard for consumers to want to purchase from, let's say, a makeup company that only has males at the top, um, or vice versa. A let's say the WWE, if they all had women at the top, I think it would seem very disjointed. So, but most companies have not cracked the nut yet. They have good intentions, but they don't know how to actually execute on DE&I. Are there any companies out there who are doing it right, and what are they doing? What are they doing right?
Yeah, it's. I was at a conference last week, and the question came up, and the speaker dodged it.
Mm. So you're not going to dodge it, are you?
Well, I'm not going to dodge it. I think I'd answer it this way. I can't name. I know that all companies are tackling this in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
I think the ones that will be successful are those that recognize that equal isn't fair, and fair isn't equal.
Mm.
So, what do I mean by that? We have different. If I look at our company, I may have a benefit, and then actually I'll go back to something more tangible. The Affordable Care Act had many great things to it in terms of affordability and accessibility. A lot of great things. There were many more people who were able to get coverage because of it. However, one of the things that it did is everyone got the same thing. Everyone. But not everyone needs the same thing. So I didn't say want, I said need. So let's say that you're, sort of like me. I use healthcare differently than a new entrant to our company. So their needs and my needs are quite different. Yet the product is we get equal. It's equal to us. It's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily what we need. So That's probably a controversial statement I've made, but if you just accept that, okay, this is what we have, this is the basis of our healthcare system, um, and again, it's provided more access, it's been more affordable. What can we now do to, if I go back to those generations, to recognize that those generations, they don't want the same things, right? They don't need the same things. So how do I do that in a way that is cost efficient? Because if I build every single benefit in for everyone, it's not going to be affordable. So how do I just build those benefits in that someone needs and exclude those that they don't?
So you were quoted as saying that benefits differences in the past were typically reserved for the C-suite. As we think about DE&I and we think about the different generations within the workplace, is should there be different benefits than for different people and not just reserved for the C-suite?
And let me just unpack that statement I made. There were a lot of PPO plans that provided higher levels of benefits to certain classes. When the ACA came in, a lot of employers said we would like to lower our expenses. We can then make it more accessible to more employees. But then in doing so, since everyone had to have the same, there was no way you couldn't offer an ACA. You could not discriminate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Could not discriminate between classes of employees. We through accepted benefits, you are able to provide different benefits to different classes of employees. Okay, typically in the past, I'd say prior to this DEI trend, that was typically focused on C-suite owners. So they were able to reduce their cost, but then the other question was, well, what's that mean in terms of we have key employees that we want to be here? What can we do to kind of fill that gap, fill that lost coverage gap for them? Giving them more compensation is not tax efficient because it's taxable for one, and who knows what their healthcare situations might be. So an increase this year may not cover what they really need following year. So you're able to basically equalize that, if you will, through accepted benefits. So that's a trend that we saw that we were able to provide. Then, as I go back to kind of our clients saying, "Hey, we'd like to do more. How can we do more with your plans, like we did with our C-suite? We have key employees. Maybe in a lot of verticals, a lot of industries, the war on talent is intense. Mm-hmm. So giving them a raise, anyone can copy that. If you look at the legal industry, big law, you might have one firm that comes out with a raise and another firm's already trumped them. They've figured it out. So that really paying more doesn't necessarily give you a competitive edge in the war on talent. So they were looking at our plans as a way to kind of differentiate, and it's more sticky and it's harder to follow. So they could use this as part of their tool. So that's where we would get into if it was healthcare. What can you do for our nursing community? What benefits? That's a community that they may be extremely busy. What could we do in terms of helping them with more concierge type services, et cetera? We did the same thing for executive physicals, where they wanted to make sure that there was a holistic approach to managing healthcare, and again, making it easy for that that class. I'd say more recently where we've gone is, kind of even broader in the spectrum, and in the newer generations, where you have things like wellness, mental health. So those generations tend not to need the medical, but what can you do from a wellness standpoint? What can you do from mental health? We all dealt with the pandemic in different ways. So we were able to do that. So if I wrap that up, because of the way that accepted benefits work, you have a base plan that's provided to everyone, same benefits. The accepted benefits allow you to cater benefits that those generations need.
So that allows you then to create the loyalty with the employees based upon their needs and solving for their needs, because not everyone needs the same thing.
That's right. There was a recent study produced by Towers Watson, and it was their global benefit attitude survey. So health and benefits still rank as the number one retention tool for employers. Still. But what in this study, there were 5 things that they looked at. One was just the strength and retention to build loyalty around benefits, addressing affordability, flexibility and customization, supporting mental health and well-being, and then family-friendly and reproductive benefits. Go ahead.
Are you seeing a lot of your clients asking for more mental health benefits as mental health claims start to have increased? I think it's 40% in 2022.
We do. One of the things with mental health is it's very personal. Mm-hmm. So it's not only it's more helping to guide me to where I can get that care. So there's mental health, there's telephonic mental health, and then there's in-person mental health. So there's 2 parts to that. One is, does the plan cover those expenses? But probably more important is, where do I go for help? Mm-hmm. How do I get a proper assessment? And then based on that assessment, what do I need to do? That's a very personal. People are not. They're very tight vested with talking about mental health. I hear folks walking down the hall, "Hey, I have to go get a prescription of this, that, or the other." They're kind of open to say those things, but you don't hear a lot of people, talking about, "Hey, I'm really struggling," and unless it's with close friends or confidants, I think those things are still very private. So yes, the answer is yes, and it's being able to have access. Where do I go? Give me the tools so I can determine where to go. Keep it private, and then second, how are you going to cover it? How's it going to be covered? Is this covered under the basic plan, or are there things that I am going to need that may not be covered?
Yeah, and I would say when you say private, I immediately think about, yes, asking for help private, but then also I really don't want my employer to know.
That's right.
That I'm seeking the help.
Right.
That I so need.
Exactly. Going back to when we look at this, it's like a puzzle, I guess, of what these different generations need, and this whole idea that it's not a one size fits all anymore. It's not, let me have medical, dental, vision. It's much more than that. In the survey, it showed that there was a 30 percentage point differential in retention between employees who are satisfied with their benefits and those who are not. So
30%.
30%. So that back to like the companies that are doing it the best, they're also figuring out, are we doing it? Okay, because sometimes we're in a new landscape. This is a new trend. I don't know that there's really great models yet out there.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of this is, the we've got to try. We've got to see how we did, and we may have to pivot to something else. So that's that's something that we do here. Did we get it right? What did you like about it? What didn't you like? And then we the things that we got right we keep, and the things that we didn't, we look for other alternatives. So I think talking to your employees is I've always believed in that, because I always like feedback. People like to give me good feedback. I actually like the here's where things aren't going great feedback, because that's
Mm-hmm.
how you're going to be better.
So how do you measure the success? So let's say a company head of HR is completely engaged. They're going to tier their programs. How do you know if it's successful or not?
So we're in this business. So let me just start with what we do. And HR, I meet with my HR director every week. To me, HR is as important, an important data piece, just as important as the management reports I receive, the financial reports I receive. So we are always looking at what are we hearing from employees, what's going on out there. It's just another data point. It's not a quant data point, it's a qualitative data point.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing that we put in place is an employee net promoter score. And if you're familiar with the net promoter score, it's essentially how likely are you to recommend us, to a friend.
Mm-hmm.
We use NPS as well for our clients, but we also use ENPS. ENPS is a bit different, and if any of the listeners wanted any information on this, I'd be happy to share. It's been a great tool. One question is, how likely are you to recommend us to work here, so, to any of your friends? And then the other question is, how satisfied are you in your company and with your company? How satisfied are you with your position?
Mm-hmm.
So it gives you 2 points, 2 axes. And we also ask in that same question, what if you answered positive, give us, it's open-ended, negative, open-ended. And then we'll also, depending on, we might want some feedback on how did you like the last employee event, or, very open-ended. But we do this 4 times a year. It's a way to measure. And then the feedback from it is incredibly good. I'll share the last one that we did. Coming out of the pandemic has been tough for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
We went into a hybrid environment, and it was great to have this tool because we could measure it over time. We watched everything from, I don't want to come back to work. Why are you doing this, Ed? To, what? I like being back to work. I like coming back Tuesday through Thursday. It gives me time with my colleagues. And I also like the flexibility to work from wherever I want. So it really just gives us a pulse on like where numerically, where are we? But also from a, open-ended qualitative, what are things that are on your mind? And I get a tremendous amount of information from that. And then we'll use that information as part of our leadership meetings, and we'll put that back into the strategy and execution process. And I think employees like that because it's a way that they can be safely heard. They can safely express what they're feeling, and our employees they're mature in their responses. It's not like I don't like the food here or whatever. It's very good feedback. And we share the results. So we're open to, and there were results we had were terrible. And we were transparent. We said, look, we've taken a dive. Here's why. These are the things that we're looking at. And these are the things that we need to focus on. So that helps build the culture. It's a good way to measure. And then it's a good way to pivot. So we have that one. Again, I kind of went on about that. And
So
then
that is called ENPS.
ENPS. And again, I can share that. I can even send you the template and how it's calculated. It's very easy.
We will put that in the comment section or the bottom section of this podcast. I think that's a tremendous tool, particularly for those companies who are leveraging NPS with their clients.
Right.
Most companies misfire when they don't have internal and external measurement systems that are cohesive, because who's talking to your clients? Who's servicing your clients? It's your employees.
Right. And that's
so it's brilliant.
And then we do the same thing in terms of, well, how does I said earlier, we're a service business. So, to the extent that our employees are happy, that's going to translate to, happy clients. We do an annual NPS with our clients, and then we do transactional NPS with members. So we're constantly understanding where we are. It's not a one-time thing. We do a big one at the end of the year, but we're constantly measuring those transactions and how satisfied they are. So to me, there's some correlation between the increase, if there's positive movement up in the ENPS and positive movement in the client NPS.
Yeah, and just to bring that full circle to what we were talking about at the top of the hour, which was around strategy and how your core strategy is always the same. It's just, how are you making those incremental adjustments to continue to improve and get better? And that's exactly what these studies, I suspect, give you, both from a client and employee perspective.
One of the things that we learned, through, as a result of, we were impacted by the Great Resignation as well. We have a lot of new employees. So, one of the things that we, really became front and center was new employees. We need to train differently. We actually revamped our training program. And we had a new employee. She had been here for maybe not even a year. We had a new employee redo the program from her perspective.
From her perspective, because she was new. She went through
it. We had a training program that we used for probably 8 years. So obviously it was outdated. We had, kind of a new generation, different generations coming in, totally redid the program. So that's those are things that you just kind of miss if you don't talk to your employees, if you don't ask them how you're doing. You're probably going to miss it because there's so many other things going on. But you can't miss those things because they're just incredibly important. So, with that feedback, we put that back into the strategy plan in terms of a supporting initiative. And if anyone wanted to see kind of our framework for how we do that, it's really simple. And I think simple is key. It needs to be easy to understand. And again, just you put that back and to refresh the plan.
Absolutely. Now, if I can go back to one of the other topics that we were talking about, because I think this is so important. You had talked about different benefits for different groups within the organization. And I think before we had talked about an organization that maybe executed their benefits differently within their sales organization. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that?
Yeah, I have it. So I have a couple of examples of how. So the whole idea around, well, how do we use benefits as sort of a levelizer, or to level things out, because not everyone's paid the same, right? Not everyone
Right.
has the same role. Not everyone has the same responsibilities. But given that we have the different generations within the workplace, how can we, use benefits in this manner? Um, Before I get to the sales example, I had another one that was that just came up more recently. Was an organization that they had our flagship product. They asked us, "Hey, look, we'd like to do some different things. Mental health and
Mhm.
wellness, behavioral health, very important to us. How can you help us?" So we gave them. They also had an HSA program. So what we wound up doing was, we understand that there's one part of the company that wants more access to wellness, behavioral health, and mental health. So what we were able to put together was, you can choose between an HSA, which is essentially going to cover most medical types of expenses, or for kind of roughly the same cost of the company, we were able to put together a wellness program that covered uh, preventative wellness type benefits and mental health, and we let them choose. So they love that because there were employees that they love they want the HSA,
Mhm.
and there were employees said, "I'd really like to have more wellness type benefits." So that was a way that we were able to use the benefits as a levelizer. And then we always ask, as we ask our employees, we ask our customers, "How important is this benefit to you?" Because we want the employer to know that as well, because they're looking at this every year, they're assessing uh, benefits, and when employees can say, "I love it, this is something I use, um, don't take it away from me," so that's just a reinforcement. So that was one example of just different, being able to appeal to different generations that have different needs. The other is, when you look at, we have an organization that was using our program, and again, we can design programs that have different levels of benefits, um,
Mhm.
and align that with the employer if they want to create different classes, etc. One employer, what they chose to do, a very sales oriented organization, um, they wanted to be able to leverage their incentive plan. So they gave a cash award of certainly for sales, but the other thing that they did was they created, based on the results, sales results, rather than giving another $10,000 that is going to, half of that's going to probably be eaten up in taxes, they were able to provide them a benefit that covered all their medical, dental, and vision expenses
Mhm.
and executive physicals. So, and then we had three different levels of that. So it was a way for them to really leverage up, uh, and really like kind of bolster their incentives programs. So it can be used a number of different ways. Executive physicals is another. Like I said, you want to protect vital people. It doesn't have to be the C-suite all the time, but it could be different. You know, could be a hard to recruit, hard to retain position, and you just want to do something a little bit different for them.
So it really, if I can wrap up kind of this segment, it really is around personalization of benefits.
Right.
Because if you're going to spend, I mean, benefits is a huge expenditure for every organization, and deploying those dollars so that they mean something to each individual, it sounds like that's really what you're going for.
That's right, because like I said, people need different things. They might want the same thing, but they need different things. So that's what we're trying to do, is to give them what's meaningful to them, uh, at this point in time. So,
Right.
and understanding that it'll probably change, as if you look at the the Gen Z as they go through and as they age, their health needs are going to be different than they were 10 years ago.
Absolutely. And that's why, having the flexibility and allowing them to choose the different levels of benefits sounds like you're the holy grail. Would love to ask you about development for those individuals in HR who want to progress in their organizations. Maybe they want to become a CHRO or a director of HR. And I don't know if you experienced this on your ascent as well, but I remember that first role sitting in a senior level executive position. And I remember thinking to myself, I really don't have what it takes to be here. I know that there were gaps in my talent and my skills. And in fact, I think a majority of senior executives not only feel that way, but really miss the mark their first 18 months in the job. So if you just got promoted to a senior level position, you don't feel like you're quite hitting the mark. It's normal. Majority of people don't. But what would you recommend individuals do that are making that leap from mid to senior level executive? What are some skills that you think they need to have in the future?
Yeah, it's funny. I never wanted to be a CEO.
You didn't.
No, I mean, I never had that like aspiration when I entered the workforce. I started out as a clerk, and just kind of worked my way up. I just wanted to be a salesperson because I thought, wow, what a cool job. They get to travel around. And I was like 21 years old, and it was just wonderful. So along my journey, I think I said I never wanted to be a CEO, but obviously I became one. I think one is I was never really a book smart person, but I am a lifelong learner.
Mm.
So one would be always learn. In my job as a salesperson, I wanted to learn more because I thought it would make me a better salesperson. And I hated to have to go back to the home office to get an answer.
Mm.
So I wanted to learn so I could be better and obviously make more sales. The second thing, so being a lifelong learner would be one, and I'll wrap these up. The second thing was I had a mentor. That was probably the biggest thing I ever did. We didn't have a formal mentoring program, but I became visible to our executives. I wasn't afraid to ask to talk to them about just different things. They're people.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to befriend the CFO, and I talked about, hey, I would like to learn more so I could be a better salesperson. And he said, you should really be going back to school.
Mm.
And I said, well, I wasn't a great student, but I got my executive MBA. I loved it. I was a completely different person because I was so into it. And I was able to, like, the things that I was learning, I was able to apply them. And it really just kind of changed my mind in terms of, I guess I do want to be a CEO. I guess I do want to run things. Mainly it was, I want to make more of an impact. So when I would say, so the one thing would be always learn. You can never learn enough. Two is always reach out to people. I have never met any executive who didn't want to help someone.
Mm-hmm.
Never. And I tell people that all the time because people they're afraid of me. Oh my God.
There's the CEO.
I love it when someone says, hey, can you help me? Hey, what did you do? See,
everybody has a story.
Everybody loves to talk about themselves, right? So that's another. So reach out to people, reach out to that team that if you think you're going to be in that group, talk to them, get to know them. What's it like? What is the language? What's the dialogue? This is sort of the third thing that's important. And I haven't even mastered it yet. You need to talk to an executive team at a different level. And I can't, so the language of being in a room with an executive team is much different than being in a staff meeting where you're talking about nitty gritty. They want high level, they want the sound bite, but you also it has to be, digestible, impactful, and move on. Right. So, and I still I report to boards, I do board reports. I am constantly doing that today. So I would say, when you kind of level up the language that's used and the detail of that language is very important. You want to be able to speak the same language, or you're going to get frustrated. They're going to get frustrated. I can't emphasize that one enough.
You are the first person that I've ever heard give that advice, and I would say it's 150% true. I think that was probably one of my biggest misgivings when I hit that level, was how to communicate in a very quick, timely, accurate way so that they hear you and then you move on.
Right.
Know what you need them for. Absolutely. Okay, so I know we're running out of time. Are you ready to give these rapid fire questions
Sure.
a run?
Sure.
All right. Here we go. So for our listeners, our rapid fire questions are 5 to 6 questions that we rapid fire to our guests, usually one sentence, with a one sentence response to give you as much information about the individual as possible. So let's start with, what is a book or books that you have given out the most often and why?
Probably, I would say the one that I've given out the most is Leading Change by John Kotter. And it's decades old. I actually just gave it to my son this past Christmas. He wants to be an entrepreneur. I think it sticks because change is always happening. The others that I really like are Lencioni's books. And there's a number of them: 5 Dysfunctions of Teams, Death by Meeting, just really quick reads. Love it. There's stories in there and there's examples. But I'd say I've given a lot of books out. I would say those are the ones that seem to be timeless to me. And I've given them out the most through my career.
So what did you do that had the most impact on your career? Would it be your EMBA?
It would have been reaching out to that CFO to be my mentor, because that actually opened me up to I wanted to learn more. He's like, well, you can work in every part of the company. That might take 10 years, or go get your XMBA for 2 years.
Absolutely.
So I would say that was the biggest one, and it really just kind of changed my trajectory on a lot of things.
Who is getting benefits right today? Are there any companies or organizations out there today that are thinking about benefits the right way?
Yeah, I'll just go back to that, what I said earlier about those companies that consider that equal isn't fair and fair isn't equal, and it's not a one size fits all. And I think in terms of companies, I think we're just so early into this that it's hard to say. But as sort of a framing of it, I would use that metaphor, if you will.
Okay. So TBD. Maybe we'll have you back next year and we can talk a little bit more. So the higher you go, the more strategic acumen you need to exhibit. What do you think is the best way for a CHRO, head of human resources, director of human resources, to build out their strategic acumen muscle?
I would recommend to the any of the the HR folks, get into the businesses. Talk to your managers, talk to your division heads, talk to executives. What are the business issues? What are they trying to solve? So I think that's kind of that's where I was always open to HR being at the table, and still today, we have areas where we've had 100% turnover. I'm very
Mm-hmm.
concerned about that. I'm still
Mm-hmm.
concerned about that. And that's a strategic business initiative for us. So HR needs to be front and center on that. They need to be my
Absolutely.
partner.
Absolutely. Well, we could talk
Yeah.
forever. This has been such an incredible conversation. We're so appreciative of your time. Thank you for coming on. If people want to learn more about you or ArmadaCare, where can they go?
Well, a couple things. My email is ewalker@ArmadaCare, ArmadaCare.com. You can also reach me through the ArmadaCare.com, our website. I'm on LinkedIn, Ed Walker, and you'll see me at ArmadaCare. And again, if you any of the tools that I mentioned, the employee net promoter score, how we use the strategy map and the balance scorecard, very simple, very easy. I'd be happy to talk to you. Our business is really interesting because we do have we have companies where we are historically covering C-suite, and I collaborate with them as part of like being in the business. So we all have. It's good to be able to reach out to people who are experiencing different challenges. A lot of them are the same. And like I said, I've never met anyone who doesn't want to talk about themselves or their business.
Absolutely. Especially if there's a benefit there.
Right.
No pun intended. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you for being on HRMorning.
Thank you, Berta.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks so much for watching. We would love it if you shared your thoughts on any of the topics we discussed in the comments below. And if you got value from the video, it would mean the world to us if you hit the like button and subscribe to the HRMorning channel. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Voices of HR.